Good evening. I'd like to call to order this work session of the Board of Trustees of the Monroe County Public Library. As usual, we'll start by introducing ourselves, and if you care to share what you're reading, please do. Kari, you want to?
My name is Kari Essery, and I am reading Making Thinking Visible.
I'm John Walsh. I just finished Elton John's autobiography, which my son gave me for Christmas, and enjoyed that.
And I'm Marilyn Wood, and I'm reading a stack of magazines right now, no book.
I'm Fred Reisinger, and I just checked out and started reading a book that I've seen on the new nonfiction shelves. It's a story about Abraham Lincoln and his years when he grew up here in Indiana, southern Indiana, down by Poseyville. It's kind of interesting.
I'm Jamie Burkhart, and I'm still reading Harry Potter.
I'm Kathy Loser, and I am reading the book that I gave my husband for Christmas. It's called Sakura Obsession, and it's by Abe, and it's about the tradition of, viewing the cherry blossoms in Japan and their connection to, Washington, D.C. and the cherry blossoms. So, sorry, Dwayne, I'm reading it first.
Thank you, everyone. Chris, you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're reading?
Sure. I'm Chris Harrison, and I'm reading a book called, it's pretty sure I lost one because I couldn't remember the title, The Deepest Well. It's something about dealing with childhood adversity, so anyway, informative and interesting.
Thank you. So we have one item on our agenda tonight, a discussion about a fine fee proposal, and a number of library staff to tell us more about this.
We do, and as you know, we have talked about this briefly in the last few meetings, and what our team of staff have been doing is really investigating all of the implications and connected parts that go with doing any kind of elimination of fines. And so Chris is going to give you an overview.
Hi, my name is Chris Jackson. As you know, I'm the special audience strategist here at Monroe County Public Library. I am just one small part of a team which is well represented, but not completely represented by all the friendly faces in the back there. So this is something we've been talking about for quite a while. You have the proposal. I'm not going to go over it point by point as a preamble, but we're of course happy to address any questions or concerns you might have. I did want to lay out a little bit of how we got here, though. The principal motivator for this proposal is access, which is so central to what we do. So our mission statement emphasizes equitable access, and the first of our strategic action goals talks about fair, equitable, and free access to library services and materials. So we want everybody in Monroe County to make full use of their public library, and yet we know that late fees do constitute a significant barrier to many. We see it in our work at the public desk. We can document it in the collection of those fees and the status of patron records, and we hear about it from patrons that are interacting with this. So we know that late fees do represent a barrier to access to many. All sorts of reasons for this, of course. It can be health issues, it can be limited access to transportation, it can be working multiple jobs, it can be being a student, being a parent, being a caregiver. All sorts of things can get in the way of you being the responsible borrower you intended to be when you check the material out. And so like all other libraries in times past, we have charged late fees to try to incentivize you to bring those materials back. And yet for a significant number of users, they still have problems doing that for the reasons that I mentioned. Now, for some, those fees are a nuisance. I mean, they're designed as a penalty. They're supposed to be a negative experience. And for some, there's something that they can accommodate in their regular budget. But for quite a number of people, it's something that becomes an actual physical block to continued library use. And we want to get rid of that block. So access is the primary motivator. It's not the only motivator for us doing this proposal at the moment, though. Several years ago, we had a separate team working on circulation simplification. We knew that our circulation was cumbersome for staff and for patrons. At that point, we specifically wanted to get more people using the self-checkout machines because a lot of people weren't. And so we polled our staff, what are the areas of circulation that are inefficient and that result in negative interactions with the public, and they identified fines generally, both levying them but also explaining them, sometimes mitigating them and waiving them, collecting the money. All of that took a significant amount of staff time that could be better spent on positive customer interactions, and it was a source of people not using the checkouts and a source of friction in terms of meeting our customer service goals. So that's another motivator. And finally, the reason this proposal is coming forward is because it's a national trend. There's a groundswell of libraries, as you've seen in the proposal, going fine-free. We've been talking about it for a while. We're finally at the point where we're proposing it to you. In waiting, there's the benefit that we've been able to learn a lot from other libraries that have already taken this step. So, I mean, the big concern, right, in going fine-free is that people aren't motivated to bring their stuff back anymore. We didn't think that was true, but now we have concrete evidence that indeed the stuff still does come back, and there are other mechanisms that we can use to ensure that materials come back on a regular basis. So a whole host of changes will need to be put in place if you do adopt the proposal. We've gone through those. I really want to emphasize what we intend to do instead of fines, though, and that is to change our notification schedule. So the fines aren't just late fees. There's also the collection agency component to that, and we can talk, if you're interested, in more detail about what the collection agency does. But basically, we want to replace the fines and the collection agency with a different notification schedule that we generate, and with changing when and how we bill for items. So currently, you build up overdue fees that can result in a total of $10 per item over a period of time once you've reached the last due date. And then 40 days later, we will bill you for the replacement cost of the item. If your total charges exceed $25, we'll also tack on a $10 collection agency fee. What we want to do is make it much simpler and only levy that replacement cost. But we want to change how we do it by both notifying you more often when you're in arrears, both before we bill and after we bill, and by moving up the bill date from the current 40 days past the due date to basically half of that, 21 days. So it's, in essence, an additional renewal we're giving you. That then becomes the hard block to checking out additional items, and that's the motivation to come back. People don't want to keep the stuff. What they want is to continue to get new stuff, to check out new library materials. We're going to incentivize that under the proposal by moving up the bill date, which will become a hard block if the item's over $20, and it becomes a block to continued use. At that point, you bring the item back and you're good to go. Right now, after you've reached the bill date, you bring the item back and you still owe us the $10 maximum fee and the collection agency fee. So it's, for many people, an impediment to bringing the item back at all. We feel, and now have documentation and evidence from other libraries, that moving up, changing our notification and billing schedule will be an effective replacement for the late fees, still incentivize timely returns of materials, and bring a lot of people who are currently disenfranchised back to the library, encourage new customers who are concerned about the financial obligations to become library customers. So that's it in a nutshell. A ton of detail goes into this. As you've seen, it's not just throwing a switch or two. There's a lot that needs to go in terms of changing our procedures, changing our staff training, doing marketing on it, terminating our contract with the collection agency should the proposal be adopted. So questions about the proposal itself, the motivations for it, the intended outcomes, and the implementation. I can't answer all of those, but hopefully collectively we can. So.
I do have one. Your collection agency is Unique Collections, correct?
Correct.
Is there going to be a penalty, or are we doing it in a timely manner that you can void the contract, or will there be some cost to voiding of the contract?
As far as I know, there's no cost to that. The contract does have both parties need to give notice if it's going to be terminated, and we've taken that into consideration. So no additional cost to terminate that contract.
I guess because the library is, excuse me, primarily funded with tax dollars, which everyone has to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very comfortable about having no fees because we're all paying for the library anyway.
That's true, yeah. So we like to throw around this term free. I grew up in Philadelphia where they actually call it the Free Library of Philadelphia. Of course, it's not free because tax dollars come out of people's pockets either directly or indirectly. But access to the collections should be free. Incidentally, Philadelphia is one of the libraries that's trying to be fully free. They're also eliminating fines this year. So, but I agree fully. People are paying for this. They should pay for it once, in my mind. If they lose an item, the item belongs to the community. So they need to either return the item or pay for the item. But there shouldn't be, and I'm clearly biased here, but there shouldn't be an added on use fee just because you had something come up that prevented you from returning it when we intended you to.
So I can speak for myself here, not anybody. I have lost an item for the first time in, well, how old am I? And so the item is quite pricey. So if it's over $20, so if I did not bring that or did not pay the replacement cost of that item, then I would be blocked, though.
You are effectively blocked once you're over that. Now
21 days, is that?
What's that?
Over the 21 days?
Over the 21 days under the proposal. So that
Okay.
would be a block that would be implemented automatically in our circulation system. It would stop you at self-check. You could come to staff and we could talk to you more about it. We do know that replacement cost might be a huge barrier still. You're responsible for it, but we do want to keep the current plans that we have, which for people under 18, they could still read it off. So basically, for every book read, you get $5 credit towards outstanding fees. For adults, you have a couple of options. You can either work doing more or less volunteer work for the library at a $5 per hour credit. You can also pay 10% of the total cost. If the total cost is such that you can't pay today, we'll let you on an installment plan 10% and check out each time you pay that 10% so still a variety of options that are in place today, but now they will only have to address the replacement cost for the book you lost, not the additional late fees and collection agency fees that we're currently charging.
I have a question. What if there is no, I know that theoretically the replacement cost is to replace said book.
Theoretically, yeah.
But there are many times those books are out of print, so.
Exactly. Yeah. Out of print, or we simply
You're just
may
not gonna
not need
replace it.
15
Yeah.
copies
Yeah.
of the James Patterson anymore. So we call it the replacement cost, but it doesn't, it goes into our general budget, not even to the collection budget. And we, the selectors see the items that are pulled out of the catalog due to the fact that they've been lost or damaged, and then they make a decision whether to replace that copy or instead spend it on the new bestseller that we
I
can't
think
get
you
enough of.
might want to think about, I was thinking about the word replacement cost. Maybe that's not
Yeah.
the word, because I could see some patron coming and saying, wait a minute, I paid for a replacement of that book. It's not here anymore, so.
That's a really good point. There used to be a time when we would allow you to replace a lost copy with a copy of the identical book, and we no longer allow that for a number of reasons. But I agree that that term replacement, so I'm looking at Greer Carson, our access and content, who would be, his staff would be the one doing the replacement. So yeah, I agree. That's,
Yeah.
we should come up with a different term.
I just know
Open
from
to
my
suggestions.
father's experience at Tippecanoe County, because he really liked a book and
I have a question
he wanted to
about
keep it.
changing the timeline, if that will affect then the collections. For example, like for a replacement, if it is getting marked after the 21-day mark, rather than a 40-day or not a collection agency, when do you choose then to go ahead and consider it lost and replace with the timeline
Yeah,
changing?
I will defer to Greer on that. I don't know at what point the selectors give up. I mean, obviously, we're still hoping at 21 days to get the item back. That's what we want at that point. At 40 days, we're hoping to get the item back. At 360 days, we may or may not want the item back. At 6 years, we probably don't want the item back. So at what point do the selectors get notified of an item that's pulled from the collection?
It's the 40-day mark where we start to say, okay, this item is now considered long overdue, and then after a period of time, it's
So with the
considered lost.
adjustment of that timeline, that will stay the same?
We really want to move it up to 21 days, so it's pretty simple. It's you check it out, you get 2 auto renewals, you get one more additional 21-day period. and then that's it. We consider it
Lost.
lost.
Okay.
And then at that point, we're hoping our new notification schedule and the language that will adjust to go with that will tell people, hey, all you got to do is bring it back, and you're good to go.
Jamie, were you concerned about us replacing items? Yeah, so I think the concern is that we might prematurely replace an item. If we're notifying more aggressively, then we might replace an item and then end up having two copies because they...
That timeline was also shifting.
It doesn't, because that's really more of a selector's workflow, and that actually varies across selectors. It's a little more artful than procedural, I guess, is the best way to answer that. It's possible that we're going to find ourselves preemptively buying replacements where we're going to wind up getting stuff back after 21, 42 days. But I'm not too worried about that happening as a result of the change.
But I think some of the things that we've learned over time is that there's a case of diminishing returns. So they either come back or they get paid for pretty quickly. And then if they don't, they never do.
I just want to clarify with the replacement cost, though, if I do lose a book and replace it and pay the replacement fee, in the past you've refunded the money if I then find the book, but now you're no longer doing that. And I wanted to know what the thought was behind that.
That is a really substantial change. And a couple reasons for that. One, that's tricky from a bookkeeping perspective in terms of how we handle taking money from the public and then refunding that money. At some point, it's not worthwhile for us to cut a check to you if it's a very small amount, so we put a credit on people's library account to offset future charges. I think that gets tricky from the State Board of Accounts perspective. We're also concerned with this more aggressive billing that, okay, you have a book out, you're blocked from checkout, you don't have it with you, but you really want to check out today. What we don't want you to do is pay the replacement cost for the book so that you can check out today, only to return the book to us next week, and then we spend the additional staff time to cut you a check for the money that you gave us for an item. What we really want you to do is bring the item back, which is a much more efficient process for us. So that would be the policy under the proposal. However, we are open to possibly taking a situation into account where it was in a car that was stolen, which is something that has sometimes happened, or left in a box when you were moved. If there's a reason you can't get it back to us now and you have a good, clean record generally, we may just say, you know what, we'll let you check out today, even though you are blocked. We'll note your record so that if you try to do this habitually, we'll be aware of that. But we don't want it to be so hard and fast that there'll never be any exceptions, because we know other things do come in. You will effectively be blocked, but if there's a reason why you need to check out today and can't return the item, but we'll be able to return it or pay for it later, let's talk and see what we can work out.
I'm thinking of it from a teacher's point of view, because I check out things from my classroom.
Sure.
And I have had to pay for a book that one of my students lost.
Sure.
I always tell them they need to leave it at school, but then, they're third graders, so sometimes it
So
doesn't happen. So I'm always worried then that if they take it out and then I pay for it and then they find it, and then it's like, well, now
So
I'm
I
just out
work
the
with a
$20.
lot of teachers, and
Okay.
and those are certainly mitigating circumstances where we would handle it differently. It does put a little bit of a burden on you to explain the fact that you're a teacher and you're still hoping to get it back, but we absolutely support what educators do in the community and want the library to be a big part of that, and don't want to change in procedures. So yeah, talk to us and we'll.
Okay, so far I've only lost one, so,
Yeah.
so
Hey,
hopefully
that's pretty good,
that's
yeah.
not bad in 8 years. So
Yeah, that's fantastic.
yeah.
So those conversations and discussions will take place, I'm sure you're going to have a process or a protocol in place so that people understand, oh, I need to go talk to this person, or someone's going to be there self-checkout to help them, or?
So those conversations are already taking place all the time. We actually see this as a great benefit because the conversation becomes so much easier. We don't have to talk about the collection agency and all the other options for the late charges. It becomes only the replacement cost, the pay for it, bring it back, or let us know if this is truly an exceptional circumstance. So it becomes much simpler. But we have those conversations on a daily basis already. We're actually hoping to be able to have fewer of them because the situations where people are blocked become much fewer themselves.
And we have already identified a training plan that we will be putting in place with dependent upon how this conversation goes, that we can roll out immediately so that people will be aware of what to expect and how to respond.
I think
Chris, can you go over the timeline? I think that would be important.
Sure. Oops. Yeah, if anyone wants to look at it with me and see if there's anything that stood out as
On page 7 in the packet.
So if adopted at the regular board meeting next Wednesday, a week from today, our goal would be to cease accruing fines immediately. So this is very much a soft rollout. There'd be no publicity about it. Some people would naturally hear about it. It's a public meeting and word would get out. But we don't want people still accruing fines only to find out when it becomes public that if they'd held on to their book just a little bit longer and hadn't paid the late fee, then they would have been absolved for it. So that would happen immediately. Let's see. Then retroactively waiving fines. It seems to us to make sense that if we're going to do this for new overdues, we should do it for existing overdues. Well, for some of the same reasons. If you paid a fine just last week before this first public meeting on the event, we don't want you to feel like you were kind of cheated in terms of if you'd been a little bit even less responsible, then you would have avoided the fine. So we want this to be something that brings back customers who are currently disenfranchised by this program. So we would be retroactively waiving existing overdues. It also talks about replacement fees over 6 years old. That's actually our current practice already. If an item is out longer than 6 years, we basically not only waive the cost of that item, but your account has by definition been inactive, and we delete your library account, assuming you're no longer a user because you've moved away, passed away, moved on. In some cases, those patrons do come back, but I believe this is also a state library procedure where the 6-year thing, Greer and I discussed this yesterday. Is that your?
It's 3-year, the state's is 3-year purging of inactive records. But
Okay.
we do a 6 years for those that have fees associated with them.
And there's lots of reasons apart from what might be practiced elsewhere. But in 6 years, you could go from being a student to being a parent, from being between jobs to having a stable income. We don't want past fines to be with you forever. We believe in new chances and fresh starts and changes. So I think that's really justifiable in that sense. Let's see. So there's specific work that our Polaris is our integrated library system, basically our circulation and cataloging system. In order for the unpaid overdue fees to be taken off of patron records, there's specific work that we need to contract with them to do. One of the tricky issues is that we want the old fines to go away, but we want notices about those fines and notes that have accrued in the patron records to stay so that we can keep track of people who have basically had habitual issues in terms of fines, just so we can keep track of what's going on in patron records. Dissolving service contract with Unique, that is again our collection agency, so we've certainly talked to them about this and know the details in doing that, but the notification would go to them fairly quickly. A lot of marketing and customer service training needs to take place. We're actually meeting, assuming the proposal is passed next week, we'll be meeting shortly thereafter to really finalize marketing plans. Again, since a lot of other libraries have done this, we can take advantage of the marketing that they've done. I think we do see a big positive splash coming from this, not just to let patrons know, but really to bring in those patrons who are not currently using the library, either because of past fines or concerns about accruing fines in the future. And then we have our staff training day on February 18th. There is a lot of training that will go into this so that we talk about it with a common set of terms in terms of why we're doing it and how it's going to affect patrons. So the actual rollout to the public and the changes in the notification schedule of when your items are overdue would be March 1st after after the staff training has taken place.
It'll be interesting to see the impact.
It will, and that's something I
I'm hoping
think
it's going to be a positive impact in terms of
yeah, and we
circulation.
definitely intend to track that, getting materials that have been long overdue back, additional card signups. We will be paying attention and running reports on what the impact is. We do want to document this as a positive change for the community. So there will be specific things that we measure, that we'll see how they change. But yeah, I anticipate a lot of positive change.
I have a couple questions. First, I want to thank everyone who worked on this. I think it's well thought out, and I really like, how you've articulated the motivations behind it. You mentioned it's a national trend, and one of the articles in here is from
Chicago.
2017 that still says, like 92% are collecting fines, and I wonder how that's changed, in the 2 years since.
Yeah, I don't have an actual percentage I can cite, but Chicago recently went fine-free. Los Angeles and Philadelphia have announced they're going fine-free in 2020. Boston is either has announced or has already gone fine-free, and many smaller libraries. When we started looking into this 3 years ago, it was a lot of smaller libraries who had done it, and we talked to them. Not too many of them were our peers, though. They were systems smaller than us. Tippecanoe was an exception. They've been fine-free for some time. But now that the big libraries are doing it, we have a lot more data. And the ALA recently came out with a statement on fine-free being really what's in line with library missions, and making a strong endorsement for fine-free being the correct way to provide public library services throughout. So, but yeah, the percent, did you find a percentage?
There's a map, this one I think,
Oh,
is
yeah.
from the Urban Library Council, where it shows across the country libraries that are fine-free, and I don't even think this is up to date. There
Yeah,
are many other
that has certainly,
libraries.
they do update that, but it really is quite a
But it is
groundswell.
across the country, and
Yeah.
I think it's of libraries of all sizes, and they're all implementing them in slightly different ways, but I think something for us to remember too is that we've been going this route for a really long time. We haven't had fines for children, we haven't had fines for outreach locations, so this is just finishing what we started. So there, and again, I think the other piece of it is, as we said, this diminishing returns. There's a significant amount of dollars that are sitting out there that we're never going to recoup. We're effectively saying that we're going to waive all of those, but this is just an acceptance of a reality, I believe, that makes it accessible to our public again.
And are there any notable examples of places that have gone fine-free and switched back?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, I'm looking around. A lot of us have been reading a lot about this, and we have not collectively encountered anybody changing their mind on it. So,
And I know we get very little income from fines, but what is it that we've had in recent years from?
yeah, so in the report, it's gone down significantly. When we instituted automatic renewals a couple of years ago, our income dropped dramatically. The most recent number we have for 2019, it didn't include September or December, but it was so far last year, minus the last month, it was some $47,000 or so. 44. So I think I was looking at the numbers. I was extrapolating about $50,000 a year, which was about what it was in 2018. Now that's just on late fees. That doesn't include all the staff time that's involved in collecting that money, and we've also waived an awful lot of fines. Still, $50,000 is not an insignificant amount of money, but given our mission and the importance of providing access to all members of the community, plus the amount of staff time that goes into assessing that $50,000, I think there's a real net benefit, even though the budget will take a $50,000 hit approximately.
Also, just to take into consideration the collection agency fees, too.
Yeah, so the fact that the collection agency, that gets really complicated. We can't know how many items we got back as a result of the collection agency, because some of those items would have come back anyway because people wanted to check out. So, but yeah, we were spending a lot more money on the collection agency.
And that, to me, the collection agency term itself is intimidating and
It's
fear-mongering,
meant to be
yes.
intimidating, yes, yeah. And in fact, it was much more intimidating when we contracted with them. At that point, Unique Collections could not only pester you, which is what they do, but they could affect your credit rating. So there could be a real lasting financial impact. State law changed on that, and now collection agencies that public entities use in Indiana can't affect your credit rating. So all they're doing on our behalf is making contact with you, and we've decided, we make contact in our own ways. We've decided we can make contact in additional ways ourselves at a greatly reduced cost. So
And
that's what's
I think
in
at
the
a more
proposal.
positive impact.
Yeah, you know, so it was kind of a stick thing. We're going to charge you, the collection agency, and it turns out that the sticks might be appropriate incentivizers in some cases, but it turns out it's not needed in this case based on other libraries getting rid of that stick. There's still the stick of you got to bring it back or you got to pay for it, but that's something that's so obvious in terms of the contract. So we really want to distill this into a really simple thing, and I imagine our marketing might emphasize this. Check it out, bring it back. Those are the rules. We want you to check it out. Please check it out. You need to bring it back. You got to bring it back. But once you do, even if it comes back late, you can check it out again. You can check out something else again. So simple is good.
Any other questions?
Do you have any other questions with information that we can provide?
I'm just happy to see us doing this. I'm really in favor of it, yes.
Thank you again, Chris, and again, everyone
Thank
else who
you.
worked on this, and I look forward to supporting it next week when we vote. It is now time for public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? If so, please come to the podium and share your name and your thoughts with us. Seeing none, we are adjourned.